They say Route 50 is the loneliest road in America, but tonight it's gonna get a hell of a lot more crowded for one crooked cop. Dirty money, fake poison, and real death. Welcome to the night that never ends. Route 50, Nevada, a void with no end. The heat here isn't just weather, it's a living thing. Heavy, sweaty, malicious. Even at night when the sun dips below the horizon, the earth continues to exhale the hatred it accumulated during the day. The asphalt, cracked like an old man's skin, radiates heat back into the black sky, but the air remains thick like soup. It's hard to breathe in this air. It smells of burnt rubber, dry sagebrush, and hopelessness. Officer Miller sat in his patrol car, feeling like he was boiling alive in his own juices. The AC in the Ford had died a week ago. The vents blew only a warm, stale draft that smelled of dust and a cheap, forest-fresh air freshener that had long since turned into the scent of wet dog. Miller was a heavy-set man of 45. His face, puffy and red, glistened with greasy sweat. His uniform shirt clung to his back, cutting into his armpits with dark, wet stains. He hated this night. He hated this desert. And most of all, he hated himself. Bzz, bzz, bzz. The sound was thin, persistent, drilling into his brain. A fly, a huge, fat desert fly, was battering against the windshield from the inside. It crawled along the glass, leaving invisible tracks, then broke off, circled the cabin, and slammed into the transparent barrier again. Miller watched it with a heavy gaze. His eyes, surrounded by a web of wrinkles, were empty. There was no interest in the job, no honor, no conscience in them. Only fatigue and greed. He reached for the can of warm soda sitting in the cup holder. The tin was sticky. Pshh! The sound of the can opening cracked like a gunshot in the silence of the cabin. The sharp, moist crunch of metal. Miller took a sip. The cloying, sweet liquid burned his throat, but brought no relief. A sugar coma. That's what he needed right now. He belched, wiped his lips with the back of his hand, and stared at his phone again. The screen glowed with a ghostly blue light, picking out the beads of sweat from the darkness of the cabin. Banking app. Red numbers. Always red. Mortgage, 2 months overdue. Pickup truck loan, overdue. Alimony, his damned ex-wife had already called the sheriff. Bitches, Miller rasped. His voice was scratchy like an ungreased hinge. You're all bloodsuckers. He swiped left, closing the app, opened Instagram. Other people's lives, yachts, steaks, smiling blondes with white teeth. A world that was so close, just a 4-hour drive away in Vegas, but for Miller, it was as unreachable as the moon. The radio crackled, static, interference. In this part of the desert, on the loneliest road in America, radio waves died before they reached the receivers. All units, code 10-8, sector, shh. The dispatcher's voice drowned in white noise. Miller turned the volume down. He didn't need codes. He didn't need orders. He needed money. Right now. Cash. He lifted his eyes to the rear-view mirror. The darkness behind the car was absolute. No city lights, no moon hidden behind the dusty haze, just the endless black corridor of the highway. And then 2 dots, 2 cold bluish eyes. Xenon.
The headlights approached fast, but smooth. The car didn't bounce on the potholes. It seemed to glide over the road. Miller squinted. Experience accumulated over 20 years of service, the only real thing left in him, told him this wasn't a tourist.
Tourists drive tentatively, brake often, scared of coyotes. It wasn't a trucker, lights were too low, and it wasn't a local farmer in a rusted-out pickup. It was money. The car swept past the patrol Ford, a black sedan, glossy, impeccably clean. In Miller's headlights, it sparkled like a black diamond dropped in the mud. The plates were dirty, unreadable, or intentionally obscured. Miller felt his heart skip a beat, not from fear, from the thrill. The fish had bitten. "Come to Daddy," he whispered. His hand habitually landed on the switch for the light bar. Click! An explosion of light. Red and blue flashes sliced through the dark, turning the desert into a stroboscopic nightmare. Cacti and sagebrush bushes leapt out of the blackness, painted strictly in the color of blood or the color of ice. The siren wailed, "Where, where, where?" The sound was physically unpleasant. It pressed on the ears, vibrated in the teeth. It was the sound of authority, a sound that made ordinary people's stomachs tie into knots. Miller mashed the gas pedal. The old police interceptor roared, picking up speed. He expected a chase. Rich jerks in expensive rides often thought they could run. But the black sedan didn't speed up. It didn't swerve. It just smoothly, almost lazily, began to reduce speed, pulling over to the shoulder. The driver was either very law-abiding or very confident. The car stopped. Gravel crunched under tires. Miller killed the siren, leaving only the light bar. The pulsating light flooded the interior of the sedan ahead. Silence returned instantly, deafening, cotton-thick. Only the buzzing of that same fly, now beating against the rear window, broke the peace. Miller checked the pistol in his holster, unsnapped the strap, adjusted the belt digging into his overhanging gut, grabbed his powerful tactical flashlight. "Harvest time," he grumbled under his breath. He opened the door and stepped into the night. The heat hit him in the face like an open oven. The wind threw a handful of sand into his eyes. Miller pulled his cap down lower and moved toward the black car. His steps were heavy, measured, crunch, crunch, crunch. He shone the light not on the road, but directly into the sedan's rear window. Tinted, limo dark, couldn't see a damn thing. Bad sign, but Miller didn't care. He had his script. He approached the driver's door, stopped just behind the B-pillar. That's how they taught in the academy, so the driver couldn't throw the door open and knock you down or shoot without turning around. Miller tapped the glass with his flashlight. Knock, knock. The window slid down, smoothly, silently. Cool air drifted out of the cabin, smelling of something sterile, the scent of expensive leather and ozone? No smell of alcohol, marijuana, or sweat. A man sat behind the wheel. He looked about 40, an ideal charcoal-colored three-piece suit, a snow-white shirt, tie tied in an impeccable knot. On his nose, glasses in a thin horn-rimmed frame. His hair was styled hair to hair. He looked like he had just walked out of a board meeting on Wall Street, not driving through the middle of the night in Nevada. The driver didn't turn his head. He looked straight ahead, hands on the steering wheel, fingers long, well-groomed. On the wrist of his left hand, a watch glinted, mechanical, expensive, very expensive. The ticking of that watch was audible even here, outside. Or did Miller imagine it? "Good evening, officer." The driver's voice was calm, even, devoid of any emotion, a velvet baritone. Miller aimed the flashlight beam directly into the driver's face. The man didn't even blink. He slowly turned his head and looked at the cop through the lenses of his glasses. The gaze. A chill ran down Miller's spine. The driver's eyes were gray, like ash. There was no fear in them, no annoyance. There was curiosity, like an entomologist examining a beetle. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" Miller began his usual performance, voice rough, imposing pressure. "I presume you have a reason," the driver replied. "Crossing the solid line, swerving on the road, suspicion of DUI." Miller listed the rehearsed phrases, sweeping the flashlight beam around the cabin. Empty, perfectly clean, no bags, no coffee cups. "I haven't been drinking, officer, and I didn't cross the line." "That's for me to decide," Miller snapped. "License and registration, now." The driver nodded slowly. "Of course. My name is Gray, Mr. Gray." He smoothly reached toward the glove compartment with his right hand. This was the moment. Miller knew the timing by heart. While the driver is distracted, while he's reaching over, Miller's left hand slid into his trouser pocket. Fingers found a small plastic Ziploc bag. Inside was about 50 grams of white powder, a mix of laundry detergent, chalk, and a little real meth for the smell. His retirement fund. The movement was honed by years, the sleight of hand of a fat, clumsy cop. While Gray opened the glove box, Miller leaned slightly into the cabin, allegedly to shine his light. A light flick of the fingers. The bag fell onto the front passenger floor mat, softly, almost soundlessly. But to Miller, that sound was sweeter than music. The trap had snapped shut. Gray took out the documents and held them out to Miller, but the officer didn't even look at them. He aimed the flashlight beam on the floor at the white bag. "And what do we have here, sir?" Miller's voice feigned surprise, shifting into a threat. "Fell out of your pocket, or did you think I wouldn't notice?" Gray froze. He slowly retracted the hand with the documents, turned his head, and looked at the passenger seat, then back at Miller. A barely perceptible smile appeared on Gray's lips, not kind and not malicious, just understanding. "You are making a mistake, Officer Miller," he said quietly. Miller smirked, baring tobacco-stained yellow teeth. He knew what came next. The begging would start. "Officer, let's work something out. I'll pay." "The mistake was yours, pal, when you decided to run dope through my county." Miller opened the passenger door. "Step out of the car, hands on the hood." But Gray didn't move. He continued to sit, relaxed against the seat back. "I said step out of the car," Miller yelled, resting his hand on his holster. "Do you wish to seize the evidence, officer? Protocol requires that you seize the evidence." Miller snorted. He leaned into the cabin, reached out and grabbed the bag. "You bet I'm seizing it, and then we'll talk about how many years you'll spend in federal prison if we don't find an alternative solution." He squeezed the bag in his fist. The plastic crunched. At that moment, the wind in the desert died. Suddenly, completely. Even the fly in the patrol car stopped banging against the glass. It became unnaturally quiet. Gray looked straight into Miller's eyes. His gray eyes seemed to brighten in the light of the dome lamp. "Do you wish to seize the evidence, officer?" Gray asked. His tone changed. The politeness vanished. Steel appeared. Miller felt something strange. The bag in his hand. It was getting warm. No, not warm. Hot. "What the hell?" he muttered, unclenching his fist. Inside the transparent bag, the white powder was changing color. It was turning gray, bubbling as if alive. "That's not cocaine, Miller." Gray's voice now sounded like a judge's sentence, clear, loud, without emotion. "And it isn't meth. It is a binary catalyst based on fluoroorganic compounds. The bag material is a semi-permeable membrane. The heat of your sweaty palm just triggered an exothermic reaction. Miller stared dumbly at his hand, burning, first like nettles, then like boiling water. He wanted to drop the bag, shake it off, but his fingers suddenly cramped. They wouldn't obey. "What are you babbling about?" Miller tried to laugh, but the laugh stuck in his throat as a lump of fear. "You trying to scare me, Four Eyes?" "Look at your wrist, officer." Miller shifted his gaze. Under the skin, where the veins showed, something terrible was happening. The veins were darkening. Right before his eyes, thin blue lines were turning into black, swollen worms. The blackness crawled upward, from palm to elbow, pulsing in time with his frantic heartbeat. "Ah!" Miller screamed, dropping the bag. It hit the asphalt, continuing to hiss. He grabbed his arm. The skin was burning. It felt like molten tar was flowing through him instead of blood. "God, what is this? What did you do?" Miller staggered back, his back slamming into the open door of the patrol car. He frantically drew his gun. His hands shook so hard the barrel danced. "Hands! Show me your hands!" he shrieked. Spittle flew from his mouth. "I'll shoot you! Give me the antidote! Now!" Gray slowly raised his hands, but not in a gesture of surrender. He simply showed his wrists. On the left hand was that expensive watch. But now Miller saw it wasn't just a watch. The dial glowed red. Numbers were running. 72, 75, 80. "Do you see this, Miller?" Gray spoke quietly, but every word hammered into the cop's consciousness like a nail. "This is a biometric sensor. It is synchronized with my pulse." Miller breathed heavily, looking from his blackening hand to the red numbers. "Right now, my pulse is 80 beats per minute. I am calm. But if you shoot, if my heart stops, or if my pulse rises above 120 from fear—" Gray opened his jacket with his left hand. In the inner pocket, in a special housing, a small capsule with blue liquid glowed. Next to it, a tiny mechanism with a needle aimed straight at the ampule. "A ceramic striker will shatter the ampule containing the single dose of the inhibitor. It will simply leak into my pocket. And then—" he paused, savoring the moment. "In 45 minutes, your skin will begin to slough off, in sheets, like wet paper. Then your kidneys will fail. Then you will start coughing up pieces of your own lungs." Miller froze. The pain in his arm was becoming unbearable. It pulsed in his temples. "You're bluffing," he whispered, but there was no confidence in his voice. "Look at your arm, Miller. Has the blackness reached the elbow yet?" Miller looked down. Black streaks were already crawling under the rolled-up sleeve of his shirt. The sensation of numbness was being replaced by sharp, cutting pain. "You cannot kill me. You cannot scare me. You can't even hit me, because a spike of adrenaline in my blood will destroy your cure." The sound of the sedan's doors locking rang like a gunshot. Click. Gray lowered his hand and closed the glove box. "Put away the gun, officer. You look ridiculous."
Miller stood in the middle of the desert, under the flashing red and blue lights, clutching a useless weapon in his healthy hand. His world, his small, dirty, understandable world where he was the predator, had just collapsed. "Who are you?" he rasped. Sweat flooded his eyes, stinging them. "I am your salvation." Gray adjusted his glasses. "And your doom. It all depends on how well you can follow orders." Gray nodded at the patrol car. "Get behind the wheel, Miller. Your shift isn't over yet. Now you are my escort. We are going to the city. And I advise you to turn on the siren. Every minute of delay brings closer the moment when your meat starts falling off your bones. Miller lowered the gun. All his arrogance, all his malice drained away with the sweat. Only animal terror remained, the terror of a cornered rat. He looked at his black, swollen hand, then at Gray's calm face. "You're the devil," he whispered. "No," Gray smiled, and there was more darkness in that smile than in the entire Nevada desert. "I'm just logistics, and now let's drive." Miller stumbled backward to his car. His legs were jelly. He collapsed into the driver's seat. The fly was still buzzing in the cabin. It landed on his left blackened hand, rubbed its legs together. Miller didn't even try to shoo it away. He turned the ignition key. The engine roared. He shifted into gear, hands slipping on the wheel. In the rear-view mirror, he saw the black sedan. It stood and waited. Miller hit the gas. The black car moved out behind him. Ahead was the endless night and pain and fear. The speedometer needle trembled at the 90-mile-per-hour mark. The old police Ford Crown Victoria roared like a wounded beast, devouring mile after mile of Route 50's black asphalt. The suspension groaned at every joint in the road, but Officer Miller didn't hear the groan. Another sound filled his ears, his own heartbeat. Thump, 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 thump. He drove ahead of the black sedan, keeping a distance of 3 car lengths. The red and blue flashes of the light bar on his roof reflected in the flawless gloss of Gray's bumper. It looked like a surreal disco in hell. Miller cast a quick glance at his left arm. He tried not to look, but his gaze was drawn like a magnet. The sight was nauseating. The blackness, thick and oily as if cuttlefish ink had been injected under the skin, had risen above the elbow. The veins had swollen, turning into hard, knotted ropes. The skin around them had taken on a gray, parchment-like hue. Numbness gave way to burning. It felt like someone was slowly sanding his skin off with sandpaper while pouring lemon juice on the meat. "Jesus Christ," he wheezed. Sweat poured into his eyes, salty and sticky. "I'm gonna die here. I'm just gonna die in this goddamn desert." He gripped the steering wheel with his healthy right hand so hard, his knuckles turned white. His left arm lay on his thigh, useless, pulsing with alien life. The radio crackled to life. No static, no interference. Gray's voice sounded as clear as if he were sitting in the passenger seat. "How are you feeling, officer?" The voice held the polite interest of a doctor asking a patient about their stool. Miller grabbed the mic with his right hand, nearly losing the wheel. The car swerved, kicking up a cloud of dust from the shoulder. "Screw you," he screamed into the microphone. "Give me the medicine. We've been driving for 20 minutes. The blackness is crawling to my shoulder." "That is tissue necrosis. Your cells are dying, but it is still reversible. The main thing is, do not panic. Remember my pulse?" "I remember," Miller shrieked. "That's the only damn thing I'm thinking about." Ahead, in the sedan's rear window, Miller saw Gray's silhouette. He didn't even turn around. "Listen to me closely, Miller." Gray's tone changed. It became hard, businesslike. "You thought you stopped a drug courier. You wanted to steal a couple $1,000s in a dose to sell to dealers. Pettiness is your cardinal sin. Shut up. You didn't stop a drug courier. There is no cocaine in my trunk.
There is a container with a biohazard label. Inside is a canister containing an experimental biological agent of the highest danger class. If the seal is broken, this state will be uninhabitable for the next 50 years. It is a doomsday weapon, Miller, gathered from stolen medical waste. Miller felt his stomach drop somewhere into the pedal well. A dirty bomb? Here? In his county? You're a terrorist? He whispered, forgetting to press the transmit button, then caught himself and pressed it. You're a terrorist? I am logistics, Gray cut him off. I was hired by the Sinaloa cartel. They need this cargo delivered to downtown Reno. It's a message to the feds. But this isn't about me. It's about you, Miller. What do I have to do with it? The cartel has an arrangement with your sheriff, a green corridor. From midnight to 4 a.m., patrol cars are supposed to be in sectors A4 and B7. The highway was supposed to be clear. You violated the order, Miller. You left your sector to hunt for easy prey. Miller went cold. The puzzle pieces clicked together. That's why the captain was so insistent on sending him to patrol the old dirt road in the north. And he, the idiot, decided there was a better chance of catching a drunk tourist on Route 50. He hadn't just stopped a car. He had stepped into a federal-scale conspiracy. He stood in the path of people who cut off heads with chainsaws and broadcast it live. You broke the deal, Gray continued, and now they are here to correct your mistake. Who is here? Miller looked in the rearview mirror. At first, he saw nothing, only darkness. But then, as if rising from hell itself, 4 bright lights emerged. They weren't on the road. They were moving parallel, straight through the desert, bouncing over the dunes. High, powerful SUV headlights. They were closing in with frightening speed. Look at your 4 o'clock, officer, Gray prompted. The SUVs burst onto the asphalt behind the patrol car, kicking up fountains of gravel. Huge black Chevy Tahoes, no plates, tinted to 0. Bull bars on the bumpers capable of smashing through a brick wall. Mother of... Miller exhaled. He didn't hear the first shot. He felt it. The Ford's rear window suddenly exploded in a rain of shards. Bang! The bullet passed through the cabin and struck the dashboard, kicking up a fountain of sparks from the radio. Miller instinctively ducked as much as his gut allowed. "They're shooting at me!" he screamed into the radio. "Gray, they're shooting at me!" "Of course they're shooting at you," Gray's voice remained imperturbable. "You are a witness. You are an obstacle. I am the cargo. They won't shoot at the bomb. They will kill you. Take my car and drive on." Miller mashed the gas pedal to the floor. The old V8 roared, the needle passing 100. The Ford shook so hard his teeth rattled. The wind rushing in through the shattered rear window howled in the cabin, blowing papers around on the passenger seat.
That same ill-fated bag of poison, which Miller had dropped but then picked up, tossing it on the floor, was now flying around the cabin like a white ghost. Muzzle flashes lit up behind them again. Tracer rounds streaked the night sky with red lines. One of them grazed the roof right above Miller's head. The sound was like a giant tearing a sheet of iron. "Listen to my order," Gray's voice came through. "Do not try to outrun them. You won't get away from them in that tub. Your task is to cover me." "What?" Miller couldn't believe his ears. "Are you crazy? I have to protect you? You poisoned me." "Precisely," Gray confirmed coldly. "I have an ampule in my pocket. If I die, it breaks. If my car explodes, the ampule vaporizes. If they take me, you will never get the antidote. I am your life, Miller. Literally, protect your life." It was twisted, monstrous logic, but it worked. Miller realized he was trapped. He had to become a human shield for the bastard who turned his arm into a piece of rotting meat.
"I hate you!" Miller roared, spraying spit. "I hate you!" He sharply jerked the wheel to the left, blocking the trajectory of the black Jeep trying to get close to Gray. Impact. The heavy SUV slammed into the rear fender of the police car. Metal screeched against metal. Sparks flew in all directions like fireworks. Miller felt like the impact dislocated his shoulder. The car was thrown to the side, but using the weight of the Crown Vic, he kept it on the road. "Excellent, officer. More aggressive. Use your size. Run him off." "I can't! I've got one arm!" Miller yelled, fighting the steering. His left arm hung limp, pulsing with pain in rhythm with the car's impacts. "Then die," Gray dropped indifferently. "You have 25 minutes left until irreversible kidney failure." That timer in his head worked better than any stimulant.
Miller looked in the side mirror. The black Jeep was going for the pass again, pulling up alongside him. A man in a mask leaned out the open window with an automatic rifle. The barrel looked straight into Miller's face. Time slowed down. Miller saw the black hole of the muzzle, saw the shooter's eyes. He remembered all the extreme driving lessons he had skipped at the academy, and the few he remembered. A ram isn't a hit, it's a redirection of force vector. Miller didn't wait for the shot. He slammed on the brakes. The Jeep flew slightly ahead, and then Miller floored the gas and jerked the wheel to the right. The police push bumper, a reinforced steel frame, slammed into the SUV's rear wheel and fender with monstrous force. It was a classic pit maneuver, executed at 110 miles per hour. The Jeep lost traction. Its rear axle spun out. The massive machine went sideways across the highway, tires smoking, leaving black streaks. "Eat lead!" Miller screamed. The Jeep flipped. It was terrifying and beautiful. 2 tons of metal flew into the air, tumbling. The roof crumpled, glass shattered into diamond dust. The car crashed onto the asphalt, kicking up sheaves of sparks, and rolled head over heels off the road into the darkness of the desert. A second later, a dull explosion sounded, and an orange ball of fire lit up the dunes. -1. Gray's voice on the radio didn't even waver. "1 left. He's coming in on the right." Miller breathed heavily. Adrenaline dulled the pain, but his heart hammered somewhere in his throat. He felt like an action hero, an immortal avenger, until he glanced at his arm. The blackness had reached his armpit. The fingers had started to curl, resembling the claws of a burnt corpse. The second Jeep was smarter. It didn't try to pass. It just started shooting. A burst stitched across the Ford's trunk. The rear tire burst with a loud bang. Miller's car pulled hard. The tail threw out to the right. "Shit!" he screamed, trying to straighten out the car, which had turned into an uncontrollable projectile. He spun the wheel with one hand, trying to brace against the roof with the other, but his body slid. The Ford spun broadside across the road. The speed was still immense. He was flying sideways, grinding rubber down to the rims. Gray's sedan was ahead. He braked sharply, and Miller, unable to stop, crashed into his rear bumper with a thunderous crunch. The impact was hard. The airbag didn't deploy. The sensors had rotted out long ago. Miller's head whipped forward, slamming into the steering wheel. Blood from a broken nose gushed onto his shirt. The chain of 2 cars, the black sedan and the wrecked police interceptor, skidded onto the shoulder. Gravel, dust, the screech of undercarriages on rocks. They flew through the ditch, taking out an old deer crossing sign, and came to a rest in a cloud of dust 50 yards from the road. Silence. Instant, ringing silence after the storm. Only the hiss of the Ford's punctured radiator and the ticking of cooling metal. Miller opened his eyes. The world was blurry and red.
Blood filled his left eye. A thin whine rang in his ears. Concussion. He tried to move and howled. His left arm, the poisoned one, was pinned by the door. The pain was such that he wanted to pass out, but adrenaline wouldn't let him. He wiped his face with his sleeve, glanced at his arm. This wasn't body horror anymore. It was an obituary. The skin on his forearm had started to bubble. The black veins turned purple. It seemed the flesh was liquefying right under his clothes.
"Time," he croaked. "How much time?" He looked at the dashboard. The clock was shattered by a bullet. Ahead, in the cloud of dust, stood Gray's sedan. The trunk was dented, taillights smashed, but overall the car looked intact, an armored capsule. Miller fell out of the car. His legs buckled, and he fell to his knees in the hot sand. And he, Miller, wasn't a hero. He was a hitman, used blindly. "But Cap," Miller whispered, "I'm poisoned. I'm dying." "You are a biological hazard, Miller," the captain cut him off. "If what you say about the poison is true, we can't take the risk. Containment protocol. I can't send a medic. I'm sending a cleanup crew. Stay where you are. Do not approach populated areas." "Jimmy, what are you saying? It's me!" Out. Click. Silence. Miller dropped the radio. It fell into the sand next to his blackened hand. He slowly raised his gaze to Gray. Gray stood with his arms crossed over his chest. He wasn't smiling anymore. "Did he tell the truth?" Miller asked. His voice was dead. "Partially," Gray nodded. "I lied about the bomb to motivate you. Also a lie about the cartel. I worked for more high-level structures. But about you, he told the truth. You were expendable material." "They're coming to kill us. My friends, my colleagues." "Yes," Gray answered calmly. "In 10 minutes, Department SWAT will be here, and they won't ask questions." Miller looked at his arm. The pain became dull, background noise. The fear vanished. In its place came emptiness, a huge black void. He was alone, always had been alone, and now he would die alone, betrayed by everyone. Gray took a step forward and reached into his inner pocket. He took out that same ampule with blue liquid and a plastic auto-injector. "Here," he held the device out to Miller. Miller looked at the injector like it was a life preserver. "Is that the antidote?" He grabbed the syringe with a trembling hand. "No," Gray said, "there is no antidote." Miller froze with the nozzle against his vein. What? "The poison is real, Miller, but it doesn't act that fast. You have another couple of hours before the pain becomes unbearable. But inside this injector is concentrated adrenaline and a synthetic analgesic. It will take away the pain, restore clarity of mind, and give you the strength to stand on your feet." Gray squatted from in front of the policeman. "We are both dead men, officer. They want to kill me to hide the evidence, you as an inconvenient witness and infected. We have a choice. We can sit here and wait to be shot down like dogs, or—" Gray looked toward the horizon, where the sky was already starting to lighten. A blood-red dawn flooded the desert. "Or we can take them with us," Gray finished. "There really is no bomb in my trunk, but there's something better, an arsenal." Miller looked at the injector, then at Gray, then at his blackened arm. A spark ignited in his bloodshot eyes, a spark of madness and rage. He had nothing to lose. The mortgage, the ex-wife, the debts, it all vanished. Only vengeance remained. He slammed the plastic injector against his thigh and pressed the release. A pneumatic hiss, and the fluid shot into his blood. A second later, his body arced. The pain in his arm receded, as if a switch had been flipped. The world became sharp, bright, crystal clear.
His heart beat steadily and powerfully, like the piston of a new engine. Miller stood up. He seemed huge in the dawn haze, Frankenstein's monster, stitched together from sins and pain. Open the trunk. Let's give them a warm welcome.
The injector was empty. Miller tossed the empty casing into the darkness. At first, there was silence. 1 second, 2, 3. He heard only the whistle of the wind wandering through the holes of his car's shot-up body. And then, inside him, it was as if a supernova exploded. Kick! His heart squeezed and pushed a stream of lava-like liquid into his veins. His pupils dilated so much the iris almost disappeared, turning his eyes into 2 black pits. The world, previously blurred by pain and fear, suddenly gained incredible sharpness. Every grain of sand under his feet, every shard of glass, every rivet on the body of Gray's car, it all became hyper-realistic, convex, ringing. The pain in his left arm didn't disappear, but it changed. It stopped being suffering and became fuel. Now this blackness devouring his flesh seemed like armor to him. He felt not like a dying fat man, but like a berserker granted a final half-hour of invulnerability by the gods. Miller rose from his knees. He seemed taller. His shoulders squared. His breathing became deep and even, with a slight whistle. "Show me," he growled. His voice sounded alien, like gravel grinding in a cement mixer. Gray, standing by the trunk of the black sedan, nodded. There was no hurry in his actions. He pressed a button on the fob, and the trunk lid smoothly glided up. Inside, there were no suitcases of money, no bodies, no complex electronics of a dirty bomb. There lay a long, hard case made of impact-resistant plastic. Gray flipped the latches. In the light of the dim trunk bulb, metal gleamed. It wasn't just an arsenal. It was any paranoid's dream. A compact MP7 submachine gun, an AA-12 automatic shotgun with a drum magazine, several grenades, and a heavy, blued .44 caliber revolver, looking like a handheld howitzer. "You said you were an accountant." Miller ran his healthy hand along the cold barrel of the shotgun. "I said I was carrying evidence," Gray corrected, "but I never said I was defenseless. In my business, auditing sometimes requires weighty arguments. Take the shotgun, Miller. At close range, it turns everything standing in front of it into a sieve, perfect for your condition. You don't need to aim, just pull the trigger." Miller grabbed the heavy weapon. It fit in his hands like it belonged there. He racked the bolt. The sound was juicy, oily. Ch-chack! "They're coming," Miller said, looking east. Where the sky met the earth, the darkness began to gray. Pre-dawn twilight painted the desert a dirty lilac color. And against this deathly sky, pillars of dust rose. A string of lights. 1, 2, 3, 5 cars. They weren't hiding. The sirens were silent, but the light bars were working, slicing the morning haze with alarming flashes. This wasn't a rescue operation. Rescuers don't drive in a veg, blocking the entire width of the highway. This was a punitive expedition. "My friends," Miller spat. The word friends sounded like a curse. He remembered the barbecue at Captain Harris's backyard, remembered drinking cheap beer and laughing at the rookies, remembered Harris clapping him on the shoulder when Miller covered his ass after that incident with the beaten teenager. "We are family, Miller." The blue wall of silence. The wall had collapsed. Only a firing squad remained.
"Do you have a plan, officer?" asked Gray, closing the case and leaning against the car. In his hand, he held only his small pistol with the suppressor. He looked like a spectator in the front row of a gladiator arena. Miller looked at his left arm.
The blackness had crawled to his neck. Veins on his temple bulged and pulsed with black poison. He felt the junk penetrating his brain, whispering to him that he was already dead. Plan? Miller bared his teeth. They were red with blood from his broken nose. The plan is simple. I'm taking 'em to hell. Every last one of 'em.
"A worthy choice," Gray nodded. "But remember, you have little time. The drug blocks the pain, but your body is disintegrating. Your heart is working at its limit. You could simply shut down at any second. Make that second cost them dearly." The convoy approached. The noise of engines grew, turning into a low, vibrating hum. Miller walked out to the middle of the road. He stood with his legs wide apart, barrel of the shotgun lowered. The wind whipped his torn shirt, revealing his blackened chest. He looked like a monster from a nightmare, a bloated, dirty golem dripping with black slime and red blood. The cars began to slow. They stopped 50 yards from him. 5 sheriff's department patrol cars and 1 black SUV without plates in the center. Doors opened, slammed like coffin lids. Men stepped out of the cars. He knew them all. The second mercenary jeep sped past on the highway, missing them in the dark of the ditch, or deciding the job was done. Its red taillights dissolved into the night. Gray stepped out of his car. Not a scratch on him. His suit fit just as perfectly, only the tie was slightly askew. He brushed an invisible speck of dust from his lapel. In his hand, he held a pistol, a sleek black Sig Sauer with a suppressor. Miller raised his head. You're alive?" he wheezed. "Give me the antidote. We made it. I took them out. Give me the medicine." Gray walked closer. His shoes crunched on the sand. He stopped 2 steps from Miller, looking down at him. In the light of the moon breaking through the clouds, Gray's glasses glinted like cold steel. "You demonstrated a remarkable will to live, officer, and rather mediocre driving skills. You wrecked my car." "Screw the car," Miller screamed, trying to stand but falling again. "I saved your ass. I saved your bomb. Give me the syringe, or I'll swear to God I'll chew out your windpipe." Gray shook his head. He was in no hurry to produce the ampule. "We have a problem, Miller. The car is wrecked. The radiator is punctured. We aren't going anywhere, and it's still 50 miles to the city." "Call for help." Miller reached for his tactical vest, where his portable radio hung. The main one in the car was dead. 10-4, base, come in. This is 5 Adam 30, code 999. Officer down. I repeat, officer down. Sector Route 50, mile 40. Need evac and a cleanup crew. Silence on the airwaves lasted an eternity, just the crackle of static. Miller looked at the radio like an icon. "Answer, Jimmy. Come on, Jimmy, answer." Click. The airwaves came alive. "Miller?" The captain's voice was clear, familiar, bass-heavy.
"What the hell are you doing out there?" "Cap, thank God," Miller almost cried. "Cap, it's hell out here. I stopped the car. There's a federal witness, or a terrorist, I don't know. We have a tail, mercenaries and jeeps. I'm hit. I've been poisoned. I need a medic. Urgent." Gray stood nearby and listened. A strange half-smile played on his face. He didn't interfere. He waited.
Poisoned? The captain asked again. His voice became cold, metallic. With what? Binary poison. Contact. Arm turns black. Cap, send a chopper. Send SWAT. This guy, Gray, he says he's carrying a bomb for the cartel, but we fought them off. Another pause. Longer. Then the captain's voice sounded different. There was no sympathy in it, only tired, bureaucratic malice. Miller, you're an idiot. Those words hit harder than a bullet. Gray isn't carrying a bomb. There are no explosives in the car. Gray is a former cartel accountant. He's carrying a hard drive with the books that implicate half of City Hall, and unfortunately, our department. We didn't hire you to patrol that sector so you would stop him. Your job was to find a reason and eliminate the threat during an attempted resistance. You were supposed to kill him, Miller, and take the drive. The world turned upside down. The sky and earth switched places. Gray wasn't a terrorist. Gray was a witness. Johnson, Smith, Kowalski, red-headed Billy, who had only finished the academy last year. All of them held weapons at the ready, AR-15 carbines, shotguns. From the central car stepped Captain Harris. He was hatless. His bald head gleamed in the headlights. He looked tired. "Miller!" Harris's voice, amplified by a megaphone, hit his ears. "Drop the gun!" Miller didn't move. He looked at Harris and saw not his boss, but a target. "You sold me out, Jimmy!" Miller screamed, his voice amplified by chemical rage carried over the desert without any megaphone. "You sold me out for a goddamn hard drive!" "You're sick, Miller," Harris replied. He didn't come closer. He hid behind the car door. "You're infected. We can't take the risk. Step away from the civilian. Surrender your weapon, and we'll call in specialists." "Liar," Miller laughed. The laugh was terrifying, barking. "There are no specialists. You came to clean up loose ends." He raised the shotgun. "All units, attention! Threat to officer life. Fire at will." The world slowed to frame-by-frame playback. Miller saw the muzzle flashes of the carbines. They bloomed like little yellow flowers. He saw bullets kicking up fountains of asphalt at his feet. Adrenaline. Miller surged forward, not into cover, straight ahead, at the enemy. He ran, not feeling the weight of his body. The first bullet hit him in the shoulder. It spun him around, but he didn't fall. There was no pain, only a shove. The second bullet punched through his thigh. He didn't even break stride. "Ah! Ah!" he roared, squeezing the shotgun trigger. Boom! 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 The automatic shotgun spat lead with monstrous speed. The windshield of Johnson's car turned to dust. The driver slumped over the steering wheel, the car losing control. Miller walked through the lead rain like a Terminator.
Bullets tore his flesh, but the chemistry in his blood wouldn't let his brain process death. He was a corpse that refused to lie on the grave. Smith and Kowalski opened crossfire. Miller turned toward them. His left arm, black and dead, hung limp, but his right held the weapon steady. A burst from the shotgun tore the door off the patrol car, along with Kowalski. "That's for your mortgage," Miller screamed in delirious madness. "That's for your alimony." He was already 10 yards from Harris. The captain fired his pistol. Panic distorted his face. He saw not a man before him. He saw a demon of vengeance. Miller took another bullet, in the gut. His legs buckled. He crashed to his knees. The shotgun clicked, empty. Silence covered the highway for a second. Smoke, the smell of cordite and blood. Pete walked out from behind a dune where he had waited out the explosion. He brushed sand off his jacket sleeve, adjusted his glasses. There wasn't a drop of blood on him, not a scratch. He walked slowly toward the epicenter of the blast. The heat was still intense but tolerable.
Pieces of twisted metal lay everywhere, burnt-out carcasses of cars smoked. Nothing remained of the cleanup crew except charred skeletons inside iron coffins. Gray walked around the crater. At the edge of the asphalt, miraculously not completely burned, lay a fragment of a door with the inscription, "To serve and protect." And nearby lay what remained of Miller. His body had been thrown by the blast wave before the fire consumed him entirely. He lay on his back, arms spread wide. His face was black with soot, eyes open and staring at the sky. Gray walked up to him. He leaned down, peering into the dead man's face. Miller was dead, but not from bullets and not from fire. The expression on his face, it was a mask of absolute, transcendent terror.
Mouth open in a silent scream. Gray took a snow-white handkerchief from his pocket and covered his nose against the smell of burnt flesh. Then he took out a phone, satellite, dialed a number. "Subject 7 reporting," he spoke in his even, velvet voice. "Field tests concluded." He listened to the answer, examining the corpse's left arm. Miller's arm, the one that was black from necrosis. Gray squatted down. He took a small bottle of water from his pocket and splashed it on the dead man's arm, rubbed it with a gloved finger. The blackness began to come off. It smeared, turning into dirty gray streaks. Underneath, ordinary pale skin was visible. No burns, no ulcers, absolutely intact. "Yes," said Gray into the phone. "Effectiveness of Phobos 2 confirmed. Subject demonstrated peak aggression, suppression of self-preservation instinct, and total suggestibility." The wind blew harder. It picked up that same ill-fated bag of evidence which had flown out of the car during the explosion and got stuck in a sagebrush bush. The bag was torn. White powder spilled onto the asphalt. Gray rubbed a pinch of powder between his fingers. He brought his hand to his face and inhaled the scent. Vanilla. High-grade powdered sugar. "No, sir," Gray continued, standing up. "There was no poison. We used a standard contact dye reactive to sweat and a strong psychotropic hallucinogen in the injector. The subject invented the symptoms himself. His brain did all the work for us." Gray looked at Miller's body. Cause of death? Massive myocardial infarction. His heart burst from fear a second before the explosion. He believed in the illusion so strongly that it killed him. He paused, listening to the interlocutor. "The cleanup crew? Liquidated by the subject. No witnesses, evidence destroyed by fire. I am returning to base." Gray hit end call. He put the phone away, straightened his tie. The sun finally rose above the horizon, illuminating the scene of the slaughter with bright, indifferent light. Gray walked to his car. Surprisingly, it was almost undamaged, aside from the smashed bumper. The armor held. He got behind the wheel. The cabin was cool and quiet. He looked in the rear-view mirror, at the smoking ruins, at the body of the man who thought he was saving the world, but was just a lab rat in a maze. Gray opened the glove box, took out a wet wipe, cleaned his hands, then took out a fresh can of soda. Psh! The sound was loud and sharp in the silence of the cabin. He took a sip. "Easy money," he said quietly, repeating the phrase that started this night. Gray shifted into gear. The black sedan smoothly moved out, steering around the debris, and sped off into the distance along Route 50, leaving behind smoke, ash, and the sweet scent of powdered sugar that the wind carried across the Nevada desert.